Newcastle now have lost 4 on the spin. That performance there was unrecognisable from the previous 3 defeats. I said in the preview video yesterday, you can lose to Manchester City. It is the nature of the defeat. Well, hello again from St James's Park, and before we pick over what happened out there and what was said just downstairs in the press room with Eddie Howe just now, I've got to say, even as a reporter who was writing to deadline, the last thing I wanted was a 93rd minute goal for either side. I have to say, first and foremost, I thoroughly enjoyed that game. I thought it was tremendous, and I thoroughly enjoyed, and you guys might not like this, but I thoroughly enjoyed the performance and the contribution of Kevin de Bruyne. How can you not when you see a player of that class and that calibre coming back to impact and totally turn a game on its head in what is his first performance in 5 months? And De Bruyne feels like a good place to start, because honestly there's a lot of anger, it seems, out there tonight on social media with regards to Newcastle's second half performance, and again losing a lead, losing a winning position. Now I find it too hard to criticise them after that, and the reason for that is a player like De Bruyne, who ultimately his brilliance is the difference. What City can bring from the bench and what Newcastle cannot bring from the bench. Well, all week we've been speaking about FFP and its limiting factors and why that has Newcastle currently behind City. Well, on the subject of FFP, Kevin de Bruyne, a fantastic football player. I'm stealing lines right out my Mail on Sunday Match Report here. You can find that in the link in the description below. But yeah, he is the difference, and not only the players City can bring on, Newcastle couldn't bring on any players, and that is why their resistance faded. I thought Newcastle were good. I thought they did okay. We'll go over the nuts and bolts of the first half and those brilliant goals in just a moment, but the only place to start really is the end, in what took Newcastle from a winning position of 2-1 in the final, what was it, 29 or not even that 20 minutes to a losing position in the 3rd minute of stoppage time. Well, yeah, it was De Bruyne's arrival coupled with Newcastle tiring, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to pick up on the reasons why De Bruyne was given that space and why ultimately Oscar Bob finds himself free in the 6-yard box to score the goal. But I think as an overarching theme, I thought Newcastle now have lost 4 on the spin. That performance there was unrecognisable from the previous 3 defeats. I said in the preview video yesterday, you can lose to Manchester City. It is the nature of the defeat, and I was looking more towards performance. I'll be honest with you, I sat in the press box downstairs there before the game. I spoke with my colleagues, had a chat with Steve Howie. I would tell anybody who would listen that I thought Newcastle would lose today. I'm always honest in terms of what I think will unfold, what will happen. The reason I said that was I just thought the loss of Joe Linton. Joe Linton has always been one of Newcastle's better players against the top teams, especially against the likes of City. To be without him, I went into this game from the Newcastle reporting perspective with little confidence in them taking anything from it. To that end, wow, what a performance! In terms of the spirit, in terms of the goals, in terms of putting themselves in that position to win a game against the world champions. Don't forget, the performance was so much better. All the indicators were there to suggest Newcastle, from last weekend's win down at Sunderland, they had taken confidence from that. They had taken belief. They had used a full week on the training pitch to improve. In the word, yes, City started brilliantly. I thought City were fantastic from the off, really, but the manner in which Newcastle came back and the creation of the goals, that spirit, and even after that, yes, we'll get on to our merit stars, and there's a bit of debate, downstairs as to who was Newcastle's best player. There's a lot of talk of Martin Dubravka, and we'll get into that, and I thought Dubravka was very good, but even still I thought City had 27 shots, but until De Bruyne comes on, I honestly think Newcastle are looking relatively comfortable. And just to take you into my world, into that match report, I've committed from 65 minutes onwards, the point at which you have to on these evening games when you are working the deadline, I committed to it being a Newcastle win, and I wasn't massively confident, but even still I thought they'd started to frustrate City. And then De Bruyne comes on, and this is where you can pick 1 or 2 holes to a degree, because yes, while he is exceptional, and Eddie's just given us a great quote downstairs there, he said, you see Kevin de Bruyne come on and you look and you wonder, is he rusty? Will he take time to get up to speed? No. That was Eddie's exact quote. No, he didn't. Well, he did take time. He took 5 minutes, because when he comes on and he lines up that free kick with his first touch, and he crashes it into the wall, and there's a little bit of a mock cheer goes around St James as well. To be fair to him, it was he who had the last laugh in the end. But for his goal, for the equalising goal, and like I say, while I'm reticent to criticise Newcastle because I thought the performance was much improved, I thought the spirit was there, and we'll go back to the goals in just a moment. De Bruyne's equaliser, well, it's the same old goal. It's the pass through the midfield through a static midfield three. De Bruyne is in space, and quite why you've left the one player who can hurt you in that domain, in that number 10 position, all on his own. And it went back to Phil Foden. The position we've got in the press box there, I say it all the time, a great vantage. At one point, Guardiola just said to Foden in the first half, get off the wing and just go and stand in the 10 position. Again, those balls were going through the midfield. Now, it wasn't as evident for large parts as much as it has been in previous games, because I thought for the first hour, Newcastle's press and Newcastle's intensity and how competitive they were, I thought it was there, even though they did cough up chances and shots and they needed Dubravka on occasions. But for the De Bruyne goal, well, that is just, it's the same old problem. It's a brilliant finish. It's almost like an assist, really, the way he passes it through the legs of Fabian Schär. Is there any blame attached to Dubravka? Well, I think the nature of it, it's such a clever, ingenious goal. Probably not. It's then 2-2 approaching the final. The final minutes, really. You're 3 minutes into stoppage time, and why the Newcastle concede? It's almost, I know there's been some criticism there that Newcastle have dropped off as a team. Well, they've dropped off as a team not because of the defence for me, it's more because the legs of the forward players have gone, and we know the system Newcastle is so dependent on. All of the success last year was built on pressing from the front first and then the midfield, to the point whereby the best defence in the league often didn't have to do a great deal of defending. Well, it's having to do a lot more now because that energy from the front is fading, and it's again, there was nothing to bring on from the bench. That today, and it was arguably Newcastle's weakest bench of the season, and that's a pretty competitive field because they've named a few under strength ones. That isn't a criticism of the guys who are on there, it's just the nature of it that they've got injuries numbering double figures now. There was 3 kids, 4 fullbacks on there today. That tells its own story. Meanwhile, by the way, the one player Newcastle perhaps would like to bring in, this adds insult to injury, quite literally almost, was Calvin Phillips, and he was an unused substitute 3 or 4 yards away from Manchester City. That was a question I put to Eddie afterwards. The goal, it's just they are dropping off, but they're dropping off by very nature of the fact in the 93rd minute they are running on empty. It then gets played over Kieran Trippier's shoulder, and while I thought Trippier had a good game, and again I'm reluctant to criticise any of them, but nonetheless Bob has gotten free on the shoulder of Trippier, dances around Martin Dubravka, and that's it, 3-2. And yeah, my initial gut instinct on full time, and you are wrapped up in your match report, is that I felt a degree of sympathy for Newcastle, and then you go and see some of the anger on social media directed at Eddie Howe in terms of his in-game management. Well, what in-game management was there? What changes were there to make, really? He's almost reliant and dependent on the players out there. The one area I would target is the thing I've been banging on about for so long, and it is that midfield three, how balls are repeatedly played through them. So I may sound like I'm contradicting myself there, but the point I want to make is, in the isolation of that performance and that game there, bearing in mind where they've come from previously, I just find it hard to be too harsh on them, really, because I thought it was just so much better, and they've come within minutes of getting what would have been a thoroughly deserved draw for me, again against the best team in the league, and officially now the best team in the world. So yeah, but Eddie was down when he spoke to us afterwards. I think he felt deflated. It is 4 defeats on the spin now for the first time under his management. The league table doesn't look good. They're below Chelsea, for goodness sake, and I think I've made my feelings clear on what I think of Chelsea on this video enough in the past now. So yeah, the league table doesn't look good, and I've said previously, it's only probably going to get worse before it does get better, before those players do return, before they are given the options to change things off the bench and to give those who have ran themselves into the ground a breather. So it's down to Villa next, isn't it, in a couple of weeks' time? And again, you wouldn't travel there with massive confidence from a Newcastle perspective, and they do need help. They do need help in the transfer market. All the narrative this week about not being able to bring in players, Eddie Howe's just been asked about it again. Then he didn't sound massively enthused over the prospects of adding to that number. So yeah, they are, I think, now probably going to have to soldier on with what they've got and look for players to come back. Is that in a way potentially writing off this season? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see in that front, but certainly Eddie seemed a little down when we spoke to him there, even given the context of what was a much better performance. Now, the concession of another late goal is a continuation of a theme. Don't quote me on these numbers exactly, but I think it's something like half of Newcastle's goals conceded this season have come after the 70th minute, and a third of them have come after the 85th minute. But is that not a byproduct of the fatigue and the lack of options we spoke about? It probably is. And I think today the reason I would want to be positive to a degree is that when you saw on the back of that full week of training, on the back of that extended rest to a degree, for an hour, they were good. I've used this word before, they were competitive against a tremendous team. It was a brilliant game of football, and both teams played their part. They went behind to the goal from Bernardo Silva, which is a touch of genius, and they've then come back with those 2 goals inside 3 minutes. And just to break them down, because I think certain players deserve a mention here. Fabian Schär's thunderous tackle for the first. The ball falls to Bruno there, just in the middle of the park, and his ball over the top, it's just all imagination, it's precision, it's tremendous. There's still work for Isak to do, and he collects it. By the way, he's up against Kyle Walker, one of the quickest players in the league. He just drops a shoulder, drops it in the far corner. It's a brilliant goal, and I thought Isak there today was somewhere, certainly for the first hour, was somewhere back to his very best. Then St James's is bouncing. I'm still trying to type and commit to memory what's happened for the first goal, when I look up and on the touchline just there beneath me, Anthony Gordon gets the ball, cuts in field. Again, he's up against Kyle Walker, no mug, no slouch. Well, he made him look like both. Drops a shoulder just as Isak had done moments earlier, and finds almost the exact same patch in net, and that puts Newcastle 2-1 in front. Now I've got my wet banded gloves on, as one or two of you viewers often refer to them as, and yeah, on Kevin de Bruyne, often likened to Buzz from Home Alone. Well, with that floppy hair, he looks more like Kevin McAllister these days, but he is the same old superstar, and I'm sorry to keep on going on about him, but if I could give 3 merit stars to an opposition player for once, I probably would give it to De Bruyne. I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I don't think that would go down too well. And I should probably stop talking about him, bearing in mind this is Newcastle United channel, but I thought he was just sensational. Now, if he hadn't have come on and made that impact, again, you know, to take you inside the workings of my duty there in the press box, I've got to start drafting my ratings for the newspaper quite a way out, really, not long after half time, and I had man of the match, and it's the guy who's going to get my 3 stars for Newcastle, and that is Alexander Isak. Now, you may be shouting back at another player we're going to come to, and I'll tell you why he didn't get it in just a second. I think I know who you guys will say, but yeah, I'm going to give it to Isak, because I thought in a game where you were up against elite players, elite opposition, Ruben Dias in defence, Rodri in midfield, by the way, who I thought if ever Newcastle could take an opposition player, I actually wouldn't say they'd take Kevin de Bruyne. I think they'd probably take Rodri. He's almost like he's like a parent. He's like a dad playing in the garden with his kids. He just looks so much bigger and better than everyone. I thought he was brilliant. But yeah, Newcastle's elite player out there tonight, I thought was Isak. The manner of his goal, I thought, like I said, you know, touched on earlier, for an hour, he did the other side of the game as well. He pressed, he harried, he was fantastic in possession. So I think Isak is the player who me there for tonight. I thought he looked like a Manchester City player. He certainly looked better than Julian Alvarez, who they had in attack. Isak gets my 3 stars. The player you're probably thinking should have got the 3 doesn't even get the 2. I'm going to give the 2 to Bruno. I just thought, even though I would be frustrated by him not dropping deeper into that 6 and doing a job on De Bruyne in the closing stages, I thought before that, I thought he was very good. I thought he put his foot in. I thought he competed. His ball over the top for Isak's goal was just sensational. I thought Bruno had a good game tonight, a very good game. He gets the 2, and the 1 finally blatantly goes to Martin Dubravka. Now, why does he only get 1? Listen, he was good. He was very good. He makes a brilliant save in the first half, pushing Silva's half volley up onto the crossbar. He made lots of saves in the second half, but the saves, if he hadn't saved them, you would have probably said, well, why not? You know, they were all at a relatively comfortable height. They were still good saves. You know, I'm not doing it. He's got 1 star. I'm not taking it away from him, but I just find it hard to give a goalkeeper 3 who has conceded 3 goals still. And on the last one there, I don't know, can he do anything different to impact the situation? I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah, he gets the 1 star, and that's not a criticism. He did well. He did fantastic. He still got a very high mark in the Mail on Sunday. I just, like I say, I struggle to give it to 3. I prefer to have Isak and Bruno in there ahead of him. But again, you know, the performances, Anthony Gordon was good again in flashes and spells. You know, he was somewhere for a period back to his best. Fabian Schär, let nothing past them at times, competed for everything in the first half there. So there were good performances all over, and that would be the encouragement for Newcastle. That would be what Eddie Howe, I think, and supporters should take from that. The fact that it was, I've used this word just before there, that was unrecognisable from what we saw against Liverpool, Forest and Luton, which was poor. It was bad. That wasn't there today. Yes, they've lost it with a couple of familiar-ish failings like we've talked about, but I think there is certainly something for them to take. Now, where do they take us? Well, it's a little bit of a break now. I know you might think it's an ideal time for a break. I actually think, and Eddie Howe agreed with this downstairs, they could probably do with a game again next Saturday, certainly not in midweek, next Saturday. So I just think there was a lot to take from that. If they play like that against lesser opposition, Newcastle will win. So I think they can probably come out of this saying they're certainly in a better place than what they were previously. But anyway, no, it's a bit of a 2-week break, guys. Now I'll probably bring you a video in the midst of that, given in mind, you know, it is January. We're not necessarily expecting lots of news, but there probably will. No doubt will be some sort of developments over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, we might do a little bit of a Q&A, so keep an eye out on my social channels for that one. I'll give you a shout for some questions. But thank you again for watching this one again. You know, just to reflect, you might be angry, you might be down after that, but it is football. And so that was to be here, to be sat there in the press box and watching out. I thought it was tremendous entertainment, real high quality, as it was in the corresponding fixture last season as well, don't forget. So yeah, thank you again for watching, guys. Please hit like, comment and subscribe. Plenty of debate below the line. It's always brilliant in there. I'll try to respond to as many as I possibly can, and there'll be a lot of opinions flying about after this one. Okay, take care, speak soon, bye bye.